Claudette Artwick, and this is the UL Appliance Safety Quiz. Millions of electrical appliances move off store shelves and into our homes every year. And it's no wonder we buy these conveniences for comfort, to help save time, and of course for fun. But how much do you really know about using your electrical appliances safely? Do you know how to protect yourself and your family from the hazards of electric shock or even fire in your home? During today's program, you'll have an opportunity to test your appliance safety knowledge through a special quiz developed by Underwriters Laboratories, an independent laboratory that evaluates the safety of products you use every day. If you would like to take the quiz, get a pencil and paper ready now. You will be given 13 multiple-choice questions on topics ranging from electric shock to safety in children. Some of the questions may have more than one correct answer, so think them through carefully before you respond. During the quiz, keep track of your score. Give yourself 1 point for each correct answer. Are you ready? Question 1. Your chances of receiving a serious electrical shock increase when A, your hands are wet, B, there is static electricity in the air, C, you are standing on carpeting. The answer is A, when your hands are wet. John Drengenberg, an engineer at Underwriters Laboratories, explains why.
One way that you increase your chances of serious electrical shock is when your hands or any other part of your body is wet. The skin has a natural resistance to electricity, and this resistance is reduced considerably when there's moisture on the surface of the skin.
The answer to the first question was A. Your chances of receiving a serious electrical shock increase when your hands are wet. So make sure your hands are dry before you touch any electrical appliances. And now, question 2. The majority of electrocution cases occur during A, winter, B, summer, or C, electrical storms in spring. The answer is B, in the summer. And UL's John Stevenson tells us why.
It's interesting to note that looking at the newspaper statistics that report electrocutions, that the majority of them occur in the summertime when people don't have their shoes on. They tend to go around that way. In the wintertime, why the statistics are such that the number of electrocutions, strong electric shocks, drops off. The scenario usually is that the person has become moist either by sweating a great deal, it's a warm day, there has been moisture on the ground, so that high contact resistance is lost. And now something else enters into it. We have to have a failure of something so that it becomes live. This failure may be a failure in the product. It may be a failure in the wires connecting to the product, an extension cord or the leads, and perhaps some other safety system such as grounding has been violated. Those are some of the main ingredients for getting you into trouble.
Again, the correct answer is B, in the summer, because as your exposure to water and electricity increases, so does your chance of electric shock. So summertime is a good time to be extra careful about the way you use electrical products. To understand how to protect yourself from electric shock, it may help to see what actually happens to your body when you get a shock.
In order to get a lethal shock, you have to have a current, sufficient current, which passes through the heart. Now, this can occur from going from one hand to another hand, through the chest. It can go from one hand to a foot. While normally the heart is beating in a coordinated manner, when the nerves, muscles of the heart are triggered by a strong electric shock, they lose that coordination. And instead of having the regular beat, it turns into a very uncoordinated beating pattern, and the blood ceases to flow.
An estimated 150 people die of electric shock each year, and many of those deaths could have been prevented with common sense and proper use of the product. And that brings us to question number 3. If an electrical appliance falls into water, the first thing to do is A. Unplug it. B. Call 911. C. Take it out as quickly as possible and see if any damage has been done. The correct answer is A. Unplug it.
The first thing to do is to unplug it, and the important thing to remember is never to reach into the water to retrieve the appliance. If you unplug it, it's de-energized, and then you can retrieve it from the water. It then should be taken to a service center and be looked at by a professional to make sure that there's no damage to the appliance that would cause injury to the user in the future.
Stop and think about it, what you're doing before you touch anything, because once you touch it, the damage has been done already and you cannot reverse it. The best way to explain this would be to use an analogy, such as when you have a faucet. The water stops at the faucet, but the faucet has a valve which turns on and off the water. Same with electricity. As long as the appliance is still plugged in, the electricity is still flowing from the outlet to where the on-off switch on the appliance is.
Again, the correct answer is A. Unplug it. And that brings us to question number 4. A simple, effective way to protect yourself from serious shock hazards is to use A. Circuit breakers, B. Rubber gloves, or C. Ground fault circuit interrupters. The correct answer is C. Ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs. GFCI may be a new term for many of our viewers today, but it's an important one to understand.
It monitors the current which is going to the product, the proper current, and that is operating the product, and it catches the current coming back, and it matches those two currents. As long as they're the same, the circuit continues to operate. If more current goes out to the product than comes back over the other line, it senses that. And it says, whoops, something is wrong. It will cut off that circuit, and it cuts it off so fast that if there is a lethal situation going on, it will prevent an electrocution. You would want to put GFCIs in the bathroom, the garage, the basement, outdoors, certainly the outdoor outlets. Now, notice that all of these places lead to a moist situation. Okay, that ties in with what we said before about the dangerous areas that we have.
The answer to our last question was C. A simple, effective way to protect yourself from serious shock hazards is to use ground fault circuit interrupters. So be sure to have them where you need them most. For example, in your kitchen, your bathrooms, or in the basement. And now, question 5. If you damage an electrical appliance, you should A. Assume it's safe and try using it as long as no electrical parts are exposed. B. Have it checked by a qualified service center before you use it again. C. Tape up all the openings. The correct answer is B. Have it checked by a qualified service center before you use it again.
Even if an appliance functions normally after it's been damaged, it may still pose a hazard to the user. It's up to the user to have the appliance checked by a qualified service center to make sure that there is no problem with the appliance. It isn't worth the risk to the family to be using a damaged appliance.
Some of the older products in your home may also pose a risk.
All right, now with older appliances, say appliances that you may have picked up at a yard sale or garage sale, something on that order, you really don't know too much about the history of these appliances. It's not a good idea to take a chance like that. Much better to start off with a fresh product that has come from a production line, been checked out, and now you know something about the history.
To repeat, the answer to question 5 was B. If you damage an electrical appliance, you should have it checked by a qualified service center before you use it again. And now for question 6. If you receive a new electrical appliance as a gift, the first thing to do is A. Complete and return your warranty card. B. Plug it in to make sure it's working properly. Or C. Read the use and care booklet inside the package. The correct answer is C. Read the use and care booklet inside the package before you begin to use your new product. Naomi B. explains why.
Each piece of equipment is different from another one, so it is important to read the use and care booklet so that you get the exact way to use the piece of equipment, also to avoid risk of injury.
The correct answer again is C. The most important step you may ever take in product safety is to read the use and care booklet that manufacturers place inside the package. What you learn can protect you and those you love from possible harm. And now for question 7. When you need to use a 3-prong plug and you only have a 2-pronged extension cord, you should A. break off the 3rd prong. B. use the appliance with 1 prong exposed, keeping your hands dry. C. avoid using the appliance until you can get an appropriate extension cord. The answer to this question is C. Avoid using the appliance until you can get an appropriate extension cord. Because leaving the 3rd prong of a plug unconnected could expose you to electric shock hazards.
Grounding is great and would work if it wasn't for people. People tend to upset the system. Grounding has to be continuous. The grounding conductor has to come all the way from the supply in the house, through all of the wires, the extension cords, all the way up to the product. And as long as that occurs, it is an excellent system. The trouble is that people tend to interrupt that grounding conductor.
Again, the answer is C. Avoid using the appliance until you can get an appropriate extension cord. That brings us to question 8. To use extension cords safely in your home, A. replace worn extension cords with new ones. B. run cords through and around doors and windows so not to trip over them. C. keep them out of the way by hiding them under rugs and behind draperies. A. replace worn extension cords with new ones is correct. In fact, hiding cords under rugs and behind drapes can be a serious fire hazard in your home. Fire investigator Wayne Luck explains why.
A couple things you don't want to do with a flexible cord. You do not want to run them underneath a rug. There's electricity going through there. It's just like water going through a garden hose. It's always moving. There's always electricity going back. And if you can take and trap the heat that it's producing, because electricity does produce heat, you have underneath that carpeting, it's going to get warm, and eventually it'll short out and could set the carpeting on fire. We've had that problem. The other problem is running it through and around doors or windows. The door constantly closes on it, the window closes on it.
So periodically, take a look at your cords, plugs, and outlets. Make sure they're still in good shape, that the wire is flexible, the plug hasn't pulled away from the wire, and there are no exposed strands of wire. Earl Cracked, building inspector and electrician, talks about protecting your home from extension cord fire hazards.
Where do you have your cords located? Are they near anything that might be combustible? Behind drapes where people don't look, behind chairs. They may cover up a cord with a rug. Don't do that. If you're going to have to go from here to there, keep it exposed where it's going to be visible. Best of all is get a new outlet put in over it. It may cost you more, but it sure beats, having to stand outside and look at your house on fire.
The answer to question 8 is A. Replace worn extension cords with new ones. And as Earl said, the cost of a new outlet is far less than the potential cost of fire damage to your home. And now question 9. When buying an extension cord, A. get one that's at least 25 feet long. B. make sure it has 3 prongs. C. choose one based on how it will be used. The answer is C. Choose one based on how it will be used. And we asked Jack Van, an Ace Hardware store manager, to give our viewers some advice on how to purchase an extension cord.
Well, generally speaking, you should always pick an extension cord a specific extension cord for a specific use. On most labels, it will indicate the maximum watts that this cord is capable of transferring electricity with. Now, also on the back, quite often, it will give you further information as to specific product use. For example, your lightweight indoor cords are 18 gauge, then they go to to a little heavier wire, which is a 16 gauge, and then you go into the outdoor, you have the 16 gauge, and then a 14 gauge. So there's quite a difference. The lower the number, the thicker the wire, the heavier duty the extension cord.
The answer to question 9 is C. When buying an extension cord, choose one based on how it will be used. Moving on to question 10. If your electrical outlet is hot to the touch, A. Increase the size of the fuse. B. Unplug all appliances and have the wiring checked as soon as possible. C. Ignore it. This is normal. The answer is B. Unplug all appliances and have the wiring checked as soon as possible.
If you have a warm outlet, the first thing you should probably do is unplug it, whatever's in it.
So these hot areas should act as a signal to you. Something needs attention, and it's much better to take care of it now before it gets much worse.
In the event that you're running into a problem by continuously blowing fuses, or you're running into a problem of your circuit breaker in your house continues to kick out, you obviously have a problem and you want to find out why you have that particular problem. Either you're plugging in too many devices into that particular one circuit or one fuse, or one of the devices that you are plugging into there is faulty. But whatever you do, don't increase the size of the fuse or don't change to another circuit breaker. You have a problem, and the device is telling you you have a problem.
The answer to our previous question is B. Unplug all appliances and have the wiring checked. Now for question 11. If you don't know what size bulb to use in a lamp, use A. A 25-watt bulb. B. A 60-watt bulb. C. Any available bulb. The answer to this question can be A, B, or C. We asked UL Charlene Numerick to explain.
If the portable lamp is listed but is not provided with a lamp replacement marking, if it was purchased after 1985, you can use any commonly available, inexpensive bulb. If there is no listing mark on it, then don't use more than 60 watts. And if the bulb is spaced any closer than 1 inch to a surface, do not use more than 25 watts. If you need more light than the portable lamp is giving off, you cannot simply switch to a larger wattage or a larger shade. You must buy a lamp that is marked for a larger wattage, because too high a wattage can overheat not just the shade, but the lamp holder or socket and any wiring to it, leading to a risk of fire or electric shock. All bulbs are not alike. Some bulbs are marked new, bright light, whiter light, more efficient. All of these bulbs operate differently, and some operate much hotter than others. We test here at UL with commonly available, inexpensive bulbs unless the product is marked otherwise. Therefore, you should only use commonly available, inexpensive bulbs.
Again, the correct answer could be A, B, or C, depending on the lamp and its enclosure. And now for question 12. To decrease the risk of burn or electric shock for small children, A. Keep small appliances out of reach. B. Avoid using extension cords when children are present. C. Set a good example in safer use of products. All of the answers for this question are correct. Martha Patinio provides some background on the risks to children.
1/3 of all of the cases of burns that are seen in the United States during one specific year would happen in the home. Most of these being children, most of them of the toddler age, between the ages of 2 and 4. You think of your home as a very safe environment, but if you put it in the context of you have a toddler who sees this nice cord on the floor. Extension cords very often are colored, you know, they're orange. It's something very interesting to children. And they either bite through it, if it's a light extension cord, a lamp type cord, or they can get to the female end of the cord if you haven't completely plugged them together and start sucking on it. It can be just really incredibly devastating, and you just never think of that.
Sharon Dalton of Underwriters Laboratories.
Parents need to remember that electrical products are intended for use by adults and not by children. Small children shouldn't be allowed to use electrical appliances at all. For older children, parents need to make the decision based on the maturity of their children. They can base that decision on whether the child can read and understand the cautionary and warning markings that appear on the product, and whether the child can comprehend the safety tips that appear in the manufacturer's use and care booklet. The parent should sit down and take the time to go through those safety tips with the child, and also to supervise the child the first time they use an electrical appliance to make sure that they are using it properly.
So the answer to question number 12 can be A, B, or C. To decrease the risk of burns or electric shock for small children, keep small appliances out of reach. Avoid using extension cords while children are present, and set a good example in safer use of products. And now for question 13. The UL mark on a product means A, the product will perform to your expectations. B, the government has tested and approved the product. C, the safety of the product has been evaluated by Underwriters Laboratories. The correct answer is C.
The UL mark tells the consumer that the manufacturer has brought samples of his products to UL for a rigorous safety evaluation to nationally recognized standards. All UL tested products undergo a comprehensive follow-up program, such as factory visits, to counter-check production. The UL mark on a product tells the user that UL and the manufacturer are concerned about your safety.
The appliances we use today are tremendous. You know, I really enjoy the convenience that I get out of all the appliances I use, but none of that convenience is worthwhile. None of it is worth anything if the product is going to perform in anything but a safe manner or up to a good level of safety performance. That's why it's so important to, I think, everybody to make sure that the products you buy have a safety certification mark on them.
Impact!
The UL mark isn't a performance mark. It's a safety mark, and it's important to remember the distinction between those two. And that's what we're doing here. We're testing to see if the product will meet our safety requirements.
Lou McClelland evaluates products for Sears, Roebuck & Company.
A safety certification is an added value for the consumer. It assures them that the product has met the rigid specifications of a recognized safety authority like Underwriters Laboratories.
In the United States, in this country, we don't have one single safety organization. What we have in this country is we have a safety system, and it's comprised of a lot of different organizations, a lot of different groups that includes people like UL, the federal government, consumer groups, people in academia, consultants, manufacturers themselves, a whole wide variety of people, and that's a great way to run a system because you get a lot of different viewpoints.
So the answer to the last question is C. The presence of a UL mark on a product lets the consumer know that the safety level of the product has been evaluated by Underwriters Laboratories. How well have you scored on the appliance safety quiz? If you got 12 to 13 questions correct, that's excellent. You obviously have a good understanding of how to use electrical appliances correctly and safely. If you scored between 7 and 11, that's good. But you could reach a higher level of safety by keeping in mind some tips from today's show. If you scored below 7, well, there's room for improvement. Again, following the suggestions made by the show's experts could help. And no matter what your score, what's most important is how well you score on product safety in your own home.
Because ultimately, the safe use of a product is dictated by the consumer.
The consumer should always insist on safety-certified products.
Safety is not absolute. A consumer needs to take responsibility for the products they use by making sure they read and follow the manufacturer's use and care booklet before using a product and keeping their products in good repair.
Thank you for joining us today and for taking the time to take safety seriously. For more information or a free copy of the Appliance Safety Quiz, Contact Corporate Communications at Underwriters Laboratories, 333 Bingston Road, Northbrook, Illinois, 60062.